hosted by the Institute of African Women in Law to mark International Women's Day, the theme of which is embracing equity. With me today are three amazing speakers who are women on the rise. In alphabetical order of surname, we have Yom Ama Abledu, a senior international attorney at Centurion Law Group and a Harvard certified negotiator, considerable experience in project finance, infrastructure development, tax, real estate, and other notable key practice areas. She's a corporate lawyer and legal academic who specializes in corporate law, amongst other things. Yom has advised on several high-profile transactions. She's a seasoned advocate with extensive experience navigating regulatory affairs in Ghana and throughout Africa. She was recently named the 2022 Lexis International Bar Association Outstanding Young Lawyer of the Year in recognition of her work in mentoring the next generation of legal minds, a commitment to professional and ethical standards, and dedication to the community at large, and demonstrating excellence in her field. Also with us is Florida Kabasinga, a Rwandan private legal practitioner who manages CERTA Law Chambers and is the executive director of CERTA Foundation. She has more than 20 years experience in the legal field, where she's been a prosecutor with the United Nations for almost a decade and has been a consultant with the Rwanda National Public Prosecution Authority and currently runs a corporate law firm. She's passionate about corporate social responsibility and providing pro bono legal services, which she does through CERTA Foundation. Florida is a member of the Rwandan Bar Association, the East Africa Law Society, the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, and the American Bar Association, among others. And last but not least, we have Faith Moni Adhiambo, who is the Vice President of the Law Society of Kenya and a former board secretary of the Federation of Women Lawyers in Kenya. She serves as a lecturer at the School of Law at the University of Nairobi and teaches law of business associations, banking law, competition law, and consumer protection law. She's also a partner at Ombok and Owuo LLP Advocates based in Nairobi. Faith holds an LLB honors from the Catholic University at East Africa, a diploma in law from the Kenya Law School of Law, and an LLM honors in international commercial law with European law from the University of Kent in the UK. She's also a certified public secretary and is a member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators UK, and is currently a PhD student at the University of Nairobi. So welcome, ladies, and happy Women's Day to you all. Happy Women's Month. Could you just all tell us about yourselves, maybe starting with Yom?
My name, like you rightly introduced me, my name is Yom Ama Abledu. I wear several hats. I'm a law lecturer at the University of Professional Studies, Accra, where I teach energy law, environmental law, amongst other modules. I'm also a senior international attorney with the Centurion Law Group, a law firm headquarters in South Africa, Johannesburg, Sandton. We focused on energy law and tax. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Yom. And next we have Florida. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Aside from what you've already said,
yes,
I'm a mother of three. I have three children whom I'm very, very proud of. A 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 5-year-old. Among all the hats that I wear, obviously, I'm a wife and a mother. But professionally, I'm very passionate about ADR. I think that's the only thing that you probably did mention. And that I'm the current Secretary General of the East African Law Society, which I'm very, very passionate about, because I've literally lived in Kenya. I was born in Uganda, where I grew up. I lived in Kenya, I worked in Tanzania, and now I live in Rwanda. So I am a true East African. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, we have Faith. Could you tell us something about yourself?
And so, as you rightly said, yeah, I teach law at the University of Nairobi. I'm a practicing advocate, my specialization being in competition law, telecommunications law, corporate and commercial law. I've had the opportunity to work, let's say, mostly in the East African region with regards to doing advisory for Belinda and Gates Foundation. We set up the spectrum management framework in Kenya and also did the national telecommunications power sharing and termination rates in Kenya. I've also worked in Tanzania. I'm actually doing some advisory work currently for Rwanda on their competition law and their regulations on mergers and acquisitions. So Africa is my passion. I've also worked in Ethiopia, based on also on competition law. What else new? Maybe as Florida said, I have one son who I love very much. I'm also a wife. Maybe something that people don't know. I also teach Sunday school. I love children. Yeah.
Thank you. A powerful panel of women, as you can all see. And this year's theme, as I mentioned earlier, is embracing equity. What does that mean to all of you ladies? Maybe I can start with Faith because I have her on the screen. What does the theme mean to you?
For me, embracing equity is the realization that equality does not put us on the same page, on the same space. We love our brothers, but the reality is the situation that women are in doesn't give you the same opportunities as it gives your male compatriots. The moment I would give a good example, when I walked in for an interview right after I was done with my master's, and the interview panel were impressed, to say the least. But one of the first questions after they said that they were happy with my CV and my experience and what I could bring to the table is that, Faith, you're single. So that means if we hire you, soon you'll be going on maternity leave. Soon you'll be getting married, your name will change, then you'll be going to maternity leave. And for me, it was a bit of a shocker because I never thought my status had anything to do with my ability to do my work. And those are part of the small challenges that people don't realize, but they affect your opportunities and how you're able to grow. Because if you're being analyzed at the same place as the rest of your male colleagues, if you go on maternity, when you come back, you're not able to meet your targets and get a promotion at the same level as your male colleagues. So it's the question of just those small biases. And I think as women, for me, embracing equity is taking stock and celebrating the women that have since raised the bar, despite being mothers, daughters, sisters, and carrying your community with you on your back. You have been able to achieve all that you have done. And so for me, that's embracing equity is recognizing the challenges that are there, but still celebrating the miles that we have since been able to cover.
Thank you, Faith. And briefly, Yom and Florida, your take on the theme of this year's International Women's Day? I'll start with you, Florida.
I have to confess that I came quite late. I'm a late bloomer when it comes to thinking that there's a lot of disconnect between what, when it comes to equity between men and women. And the reality of it, it also stems from people's experiences. I come from a line of at least two very strong women that raised me, my grandmother and my mother. I didn't ever see my mother thinking she was disadvantaged because she worked extremely hard to achieve what she did. So even when I was doing my studies, because I did a master's degree in human rights, I was literally not interested in gender discussions and women, because I thought if you already think that you're disadvantaged, then you're already halfway done, already halfway to failure. But then, as in the workspace and as I got older and got more experience, I realized that perhaps my thinking is not the experience of everyone. It's not the thinking that everybody has. And I can tell you, every time I face something, just because of people's biases that I was a woman, my go-to reaction is, okay, I'm going to show you that despite me being a woman, I can do it. And then, you know, if you have that strategy, you literally achieve a lot of things that you never even thought, because you go into, you know, the mode of, okay, everybody thinks I'm disadvantaged. I'm going to show them this is not how it's done. This is not how it is. I am not disadvantaged. So even just starting my law firm, I did approach some people to be partners with me, and they said no. And I knew the reason was because I was a woman. And then I said, all right, here goes. I'm going to create one of the best law firms, despite what you think. And then guess what? You come back to me and I'll be like, hell no. So when it comes to equity, there are so many women now, I have come to that realization that women need to be, we are not going to be allowed into spaces. We have to actually hold each other's hands and go to those spaces that people think we should not be. And to be quite honest, it's not just men, even women think that way. So it's, that's my take on equity when it comes to gender and International Women's Day.
Follow-up question. When did you realize that there was no equity in the world and that you had to do something about it?
So when I started private legal practice, that's when I actually started realizing, when I was doing a lot of work with the Rwanda Bar Association, talking to female lawyers who are, we have a percentage that is not that great among in the Rwanda Bar Association. And the Rwanda Bar Association commissioned me to do a research on the status of female lawyers within the Bar Association. And that's when I realized there was some type of disadvantage, which we together with the Rwanda Bar Association are trying to address. But that's just in legal practice. But when you do work pro bono legal services in the space of assisting young women and girls who have been victims of SGBV, then you actually realize that there's a lot that still needs to be done. Yeah.
Thank you. And maybe just a reminder to those of you who are our viewers, the Institute for African Women in Law is currently conducting a survey on the status of women lawyers across Africa. So if you've happened across that survey, please do fill it in. We need that information to help us assess the status of women lawyers across the continent. Okay, I'll move to Faith. What does, you're a very prominent woman in your law society. You're the vice president of the Law Society in Kenya. What does the future of women in the legal profession look like?
We have more and more active younger lawyers, and even I could say from what I see from before they get to the bar as a lecturer is that there are more women taking up to do the law, and the challenge has always been how many decide to go into practice, because a lot prefer employment, so practice as in-house counsel. But with the changing sphere, I think it's getting better. The Law Society is trying to protect our members. We passed a policy on anti-bullying and sexual harassment. And so more and more we are taking cases of disciplining seniors who involve themselves in sexual harassment of young female lawyers. And I think they have also become bolder and they demand their space, because I would say recently a survey was done by the young lawyers and it was led by a female young lawyer. So she set up a whole virtual questionnaire and she published all the findings, highlighting what are the issues in the different law firms and identifying the particular persons in certain cases. And so this was something that was taken up by ourselves also as follow-up. But the most important thing that they even made certain law firms change their internal policies to ensure that it's a friendly environment for as many lawyers as possible. So for me, that was a great impact on how younger lawyers are taking up their space, and particularly the younger women. My challenge is that they had before was, I would say, the Law Society is framed in a manner that most continuous professional development would happen in different parts of the country and you have to physically attend. But I say COVID has been a blessing because now we have them virtually. So you can work from your house, and also courts have gone virtual in our country. So the challenges that a lot of young mothers had, that you'd find a lot of them now not able to engage in practice or lose their jobs, it's becoming a story of the past. And we're having more and more female lawyers opening their law firms. I would say it's quite encouraging to see a huge, larger law firms coming up that are female-led. That's why I'm excited when I hear when Florida is talking, because for so long, I remember when we were doing some study and a South African professor was asking me, Faith, how many female-led law firms are there? And that time, I think there was only one. Because even the female partners would be part of a partnership where a majority are the men. So you'd be looking for, when you join from law school and you join a large firm, you'd be looking at who can I identify with. And most females weren't even taking the corporate and commercial sections of the law. So you'd be like, who can I look up to mentor me? And you'd find the very strong women are in part of the large law firms, but there are the few that are coming up. But I would say there are more now law firms that are run by females, more women, sorry, and you'd see more partners are coming up. So for me, it's a great step. We are having more women coming out, and also even in practice in academia, we're seeing more and more women rising up till LLD level. Currently, there is one other LLD, the only two, I think, in Kenya, and at least we have a female professor who is an LLD holder. So for me, it also, by just them stepping out, it shows to the younger advocates the potential. And also we keep celebrating. In our legal profession, we have the first situation of having a Chief Justice, the Deputy Chief Justice, and the Chief Registrar of the courts is also female. Because I remember when they were going through vetting by the Judicial Service Commission, everyone was afraid that if we get the female Chief Justice, then they'll find a way to kick out the Deputy Chief Justice. Or they might say that because there's a female deputy, then they can't be a Chief Justice who was female, but it happened. So there's now that realization that the sky is the limit, and we are pushing and breaking barriers. And also to say that one of our senior advocates was the candidate for deputy president, and there was a strong chance that she would have gotten it. So I think the future is bright, and it's only breaking more barriers or stretching our spaces. Yeah.
Okay, we'll turn back to Florida. Florida, you've set up your own firm. You even have your own foundation that empowers women. You've got the CETA Law Firm and the CETA Foundation. Could you tell us what strategies you employ to empower other women?
So the first one is providing a space for mentorship. So we do in the law firm bring on young lawyers, especially young female law students that are recent graduates. We give them internships and provide them with advice on which areas of law they should be looking into, depending on their passions and what the market is like. So in school, sometimes law students get to be told about traditional legal practice areas. So we tell them the trends in the market and give them the tools and provide them with a senior lawyer to do ongoing mentorship for them. But also in the foundation, we have created a space where we have what we call café juridique, so judicial cafes, which take up about 2 hours every Friday. where we talk about different legal topics, bring in specialists in those areas of law to talk to young lawyers and whoever is interested in the legal community to listen in. And we also give them skills in networking, because, you know, sometimes as women in law, we feel like we can't, you know, do deals like at the golf club, we can't go to bars, we can't do all of that. But there are other things that we can do that can provide opportunities for networking. We shouldn't be afraid to do that. And also show other female lawyers that you can actually run a law firm and run it successfully. A law firm is a business. It's not something that you take lightly. So you have to have a strategy of how you're going to grow this law firm. We give them, you know, point to them where we went wrong. So if you are planning to do the same thing, if you need advice on anything, we are literally an open book, just because we know that people need to have this. We've also created programs in the foundation. One of them is called the Judicial Clerkship Program, where we bring in some of the top law students and give them intensive trainings for a couple of weeks to give them actually the skill sets that you need to survive in the real legal field. And majority of them have been young female law student graduates. And then we send them off to do judicial clerkships and internships to areas where they would be interested in possibly to work in the future. And then we give them some type of stipend to support them while they're doing that. And then we have also an opportunity to provide a 2-year residence to startups. And of course, female-led ones have priority, where we give them ongoing legal services for 2 years. And then once, we hope during those 2 years, they'll be able to stand on their own 2 feet and hire a legal counsel that will continue supporting them. And then when they do that, we try to give them the skills that they will need to continue with that kind of work in-house. So when we do that residence, we give them, you know, all kinds of support in terms of legal setup, registration of those companies, negotiation skills, because, you know, sometimes people take advantage of startups. We review their contracts or even draft them for all kinds of services they will need and provide them with ongoing legal advisory services for free for 2 years. So yes, that is how we are trying to empower women in different spaces legally. Thank you.
Thank you. That sounds wonderful. An extremely practical experience for young lawyers. Yom, we'll try again. Could you please give us your experience of how a mentor has helped you and what their contribution was to where you are today?
Yes, sorry about that. Yes, I've had so many mentors who have positively contributed to my growth. Notably, one person I've mentioned that has held my hand through it all is Kojo Benti Encho of blessed memory. So he's actually encouraged me to aspire to high. There are quite a number of them, and I can't mention them all on the call here. I fondly remember one experience with him where after I finished my pupillage, he usually calls me on Sundays to update him on where I've reached in my career and to encourage me to do more.
Sorry, or maybe just as a follow-up question, I didn't ask your take on this year's International Women's Day theme, embracing equity.
Okay, so for this year's theme, I feel it's very apt, especially where I am currently. Being the first Ghanaian woman to win the IBA Outstanding Young Lawyer of the Year, I'm a beneficiary to the efforts of women before me to open doors for younger women after them. I'm the product of their attempts to champion equity. So this year's theme is a personal celebration and a call to everyone, men and women, to strive for gender equity, especially in the legal industry.
Thank you very much, Yom. And lastly, I will ask each of you the same question. What advice would you give young female lawyers, maybe yourself, at the beginning of your career? What advice would you give? I'll start with Faith.
I would say get a mentor. That would be one of the first things I would say. A mentor has helped me, or I've had different kinds of mentors in my life, and they have helped me strive more, reach to greater heights, and also not sit in my comfort zone, because they push you to things that you didn't think that you're capable, and especially when you're scared. And I would say if you get a good mentor, they are willing to even put themselves out there for you to be able to see you grow. One thing my mentor, Professor Mbote, always tells me is that since you have been mentored, always hold someone else's hand. So I always try also to hold as many hands as I can, because I'm also reaching out to other hands to hold me up and raise me and to look and to grow. I would say also have passion in whatever you do, because you're authentic by the things that you do. No one can fake it. If you're not passionate about something, don't do it. It's never worth it. Take up something and take it up passionately. And sometimes the small things that we think are not important, people see the passion and they see the value and how much you put into it. And that's when someone creates an interest in you. Put yourselves out there. Don't fold yourself into the corner. Something that I've always done is that I pick up opportunities, some that even I might be a bit scared of, but it forces me to read wider, push myself harder, because you're already afraid of the challenges that may surmount before you. But if you don't try, then you'll never know what you could be able to do. So don't sit in your comfort zone. I entered into leadership by chance, because I was passionate about something about women lawyers in FIDA. And I remember I was a young advocate. I was only 2 years in the bar. And one of my seniors, she told me, why not? Put yourself out there and see and represent the young advocates and things and their views. And that's how I got into leadership at the inception. Something else is that also be purposeful in building your brand. You have to look at yourself and question, what do you want to see yourself 5 years, 10 years from now? Florida said that law firms are business. They are a business in so many sense of the word. And so even whatever you're doing, you must be deliberate, because you have to think at the end of the day, I know there are bills that must be paid. So what am I doing to help me reach the next level to grow this business? And also at the same time, grow yourself and do something every year. Strive to do a professional course, a certificate course, anything, at least every year, do something different. I always try and push myself, whether it's arbitration that I'm growing in, or mediation that you're doing, or something in the professional course. We have now ESG that is coming up. You need to update yourself, get certified properly to be able to do more work in the corporate sector. Data protection is new. Learn. I think as a lawyer, when you get that LLB, you've been given all the powers that pertains for you to read. So you cannot say you have adequate information. And I've always been a corporate commercial lawyer, but I found myself recently looking even into food security and ESG. And my partners were they were thinking that is Faith crazy, but I was like, no, that's where the future is. And I'm looking into partnerships with others who want to see how they can work across Africa with that same agenda. And so opportunities are available for the young lawyer more so now than ever before, because you're in the internet and digital stage. You're in that stage of life where internet is working for you, tech is working for you. So there are things you can beat seniors at that they weren't good in. People can set up wholly virtual offices and run them so well and get big clients. But I know that they have the physical offices, but they're doing so well because they're using the internet. You're managing an entire office using DigiSpace. So you having a proper digital file management system, bring up system that is digital. And I learned that from a young lawyer. So he sat me down and told me, we can do this all for you. And I learned from him, and even doing trainings that I've also moved into. And he taught me how to do trainings through the virtual space and how to build upon it, because the COVID period, you have clients who still need support, but how do you support them? You need to move into the digital space. So there's so much opportunities for young lawyers that I think you can only reach as far as what you can tell yourself, and always reach out if you feel that you're drowning. There are so many young lawyers, particularly now, suffering from mental health cases and abuse of drugs. Reach out. There are so many senior lawyers out here, or other your friends or colleagues. Don't drown in a space on your own. Don't feel ashamed. At one time or another, we all needed somebody to hold our hands and tell us it's going to be fine. So the sky is the limit. And as we celebrate International Women's Day, I can say this, there's so much opportunities out there for you. And even it's not limited to one jurisdiction. You can be an expert and work in entire of Africa, work in Europe, in America. So it's up to you to limit yourself or to expand the borders that you can reach. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Faith. And Yom, in 2 minutes, your take, what advice would you give younger lawyers?
Yes, for the younger lawyers, particularly the young female lawyers, please be ambitious. And I advise all female lawyers that they should know that success has no gender, so you can accomplish anything if you set your mind to it and you are capable.
Thank you so much. We're now opening it up for questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, please do type them in the Q&A box that's at the bottom of the screen. I have 2 questions at the moment. The first is from Barbara Agbuti, and she says, hello, good evening. I'm humbled to be on this call. My question is, how can I get mentors, internships? She wants to find out how she can get a mentor. And the second one is from Mulubwa Mpundu, who's asking me, in fact, whether we would be interested in creating intensive training for young women like herself, something in line with what Florida does. She's eager to learn and navigate the legal spaces in Zambia. She's briefly worked for a male law firm and would love a chance to work with women, I believe. So Florida, would you like to take those? How can she get internships? And how can we perhaps set up something like what you are doing with CETA Foundation here in Zambia or elsewhere?
Yeah, thank you, Linda. And thank you to the person who asked the question. I honestly feel like in order for women, for us women in law in Africa to get somewhere, we need to do these kinds of programs in our countries. And the reason is that it does not pay for us to celebrate in each country, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 women lawyers that are leading law firms that are doing well, while the rest of the women in law are not realizing their potential. So I honestly feel that we need to do this as intentionally as we can, in order to ensure that we create, eventually the goal would be to create a critical mass of very highly trained, highly capable women lawyers in Africa. And to do that, this is not something that happens overnight. We are as weak or as strong as our weakest link. So to me, I don't celebrate the fact that maybe in Rwanda, we have maybe 4 or 5 law firms that are successfully led by women. It's not something to be proud of. And I think if the lessons I've learned over the 20-something years that I've been practicing law or that I've been working in the legal field, they're meaningless unless I pass on that knowledge to someone else who can benefit from it. And I think if Women in Law, this organization that has organized this, consistently does this and does it in different parts of Africa and replicates programs like that, I think it will eventually create that dream of having a critical mass of female lawyers or legal practitioners that are at par with the male lawyers that are in the same field. Then we wouldn't be having these conversations, would we? I think that's that would be something beautiful to have.
Indeed, maybe I'll just ask Yom, because Barbara was asking about how to get the panelists to be a mentor. What's your take on whether mentorship should grow organically or whether it should be in the form of a program? What's your view? What is the best mentorship relationships you've had and how have they arisen?
Yes, for me, I think that the mentee plays a vital role. So you can't just sit back and expect someone to come to you to mentor you. You have to actually approach people. There are few people that have mentored me. It's not a program, but then they are senior lawyers at the bar. So I just see them and I sometimes I cold email them or I approach them and say, can you help me with this particular thing? And they tell you what you can do. So they'll just give you ideas. It's not something that the relationship doesn't necessarily have to span over a long period of time. It could be a one-off. So yes, it should grow organically. And I am also for the mentorship programs that are being rolled out frequently. It also helps as well. But then the mentee shouldn't sit back and relax and wait to be mentored. You actually have to go look for opportunities and get people to speak to.
Thank you very much. Let me just see if there are any other questions in the box. There's a question here as to how to join the Institute for African Women in Law. I'm not sure if somebody from the organization would like to type a response to that. There's an anonymous attendee who says, any conversation around gender equity acknowledges that we are living in a system that is riddled with chronic inequalities. These inequalities do not appear out of the blue. They were intentionally built into the system for the benefit of one gender and to the detriment of the other. What do you say to the young female lawyer who asks you how you're tackling this issue intentionally? I think Florida did touch on that. But maybe Faith, in 1 minute, maybe you could summarize what you think is a way to intentionally tackle gender inequalities.
So I would answer it in my way. So I would say we do it intentionally by you talk about it, and in the various spaces you see how to deal with the concern. Let's start with the judiciary. In the Kenyan judiciary, we make sure we raise alarm that every recruitment must meet the 2/3 gender, that there needs to be equal distribution. And in fact, in our judiciary today, we can celebrate that till the High Court, there is that proper distribution. What we're still fighting for is in the higher spaces, in the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal, and the High Court, to have equal number of women in those spaces. In politics, under the Constitution, we had the provision for the women representative, but we still fight and support women to take up those spaces by ensuring they're properly trained and they're supported during the campaign period in terms of if they need to raise alarm in terms of any attacks upon their person. During the campaign period, we try and support them in that way. In practice, there's mentorship. So we're trying as much as possible to deal with it, with opening mentorship opportunities. And as Vice President, I'm working on something that we can try and mentor as many as possible, which will probably start off as virtual because the need is quite enormous. In academia, what happens is the seniors are trying to mentor the younger ones that are coming into the space. Here is still a challenge in how to deal with the bureaucratic system, but it's working in slowly. The changes are happening slowly. So you have to attack it in the various facets, and you speak about it and you identify solutions to how to deal with the problem in the various spaces. So for me, that is what there's the realization, yes, but then you either put affirmative action or you try and ensure that there's more support systems to enable the growth and more women to come up in those sectors. Yeah.
Thank you, Faith. Barbara's asking how she can reach out to the panelists. Perhaps you can type in, send an email to the Institute for African Women in Law, and I'm sure they'll be able to connect you if accordingly. There's also a comment here from Miriam Lowoko, who's a third-year student from Uganda. She'd like to find out how she can capitalize on platforms such as this and increase her networking as a young female lawyer. Yom, would you like to tackle that?
Yes, I think social media is a very powerful tool. So everybody should use social media correctly. So for her question, I think you can go on LinkedIn, which is a more professional site. It's very easy for you to meet other professionals on there as well. Then you can start networking from there. So LinkedIn, as opposed to the other fun social media, so like Facebook, I would advise you go on LinkedIn. That's much better.
Thank you so much. Florida, there's 1 minute remaining before we need to conclude. Could you, I mean, you've been practicing for a good 20 years now, and what do you think has gotten you to where you're at the moment?
The first thing is that I have never been comfortable. I'm always looking for a new challenge. Like Faith said, you don't have to stick to one specialization. Initially, I was doing international criminal law, and then I pivoted and did something completely different. And then I pivoted, now I'm doing arbitration, just because I keep challenging myself to do a lot of different things, but also planning. Nothing happens by accident. You have to be able to plan. And the best thing about women, which is something that we should all capitalize on, is that we're very, very good multitaskers and planners. So if you are leading a law firm, you can plan and say, in 5 years, this is where I must be. And if you're looking at your career, you say, for example, I want to be the top arbitrator in this country. You start doing courses, educating yourself. You develop your own person. And then after, you actually must find somebody who has succeeded to be the one mentoring you. Don't look for a corporate lawyer when you want to do ADR. That doesn't make sense anyway. Don't look at somebody who has failed to be the one guiding you to succeed. That person doesn't know how to succeed. I'm sorry to say, but this is what you need to be thinking. And don't be apologetic for being ambitious. If you are apologetic, you don't want to show that because somehow you threaten people, I mean, you will not achieve what you want to achieve. I think I went over a minute.
Excellent advice. I really appreciate it. I have learned something and I'll have something to take away. So in the last few minutes we have, I'd just like to invite all of you in 2 minutes each to just give your final thoughts. So I will start with Yom.
So like I mentioned earlier, please be ambitious and don't apologize for it. And then be very excellent, be very good at what you do. And then make sure you keep learning, because you might think you know now, but then there's always room to learn more. So please be ambitious and then keep learning, strive for excellence. And then be yourself, be your best self, wherever you find yourself, any workplace you find, wherever you find your place, just be your best self and be true to yourself. I think you'll be able to succeed. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Yom. And Faith, would you like to give your concluding remarks?
I'll just say, be humble. You can only learn when you're more humble and you're able to listen and you're open to and receptive to information from others. Read widely and wildly. I say that because reading a wide variety builds your knowledge, builds your capacity in how you address matters. And where you can't travel to culturalize yourself, you can travel through the pages of a book. There are always new areas of law, so think about it. And as you build your business, think about where do you want to see your business in the future, because the law follows society. So when the society moves, also your mind needs to move to follow and be able to come up with solutions of what the society is thinking about today. Keep your values and your morals. At the end of the day, you have to answer to self. I forget the judge, the chancellor of the English court, where he said that if he opens, it was a question of whether he would give in from his morality to be able to please the king. And he said, he told his son that if I open my hands, and then the water that will be holding in my hands will all spill out. So what would be left? So the moment you move an inch, you move a mile, and you lose your authentic self and you cease to be happy. And do pro bono work. Pro bono work has a way that it teaches you and it builds you, and you learn to be human because you share in the challenges that the people around you also share in. And the Lord is grateful because by helping others, opportunities and doors will come to you as well. And I say that in life, opportunities happen to every single person. So prepare yourself to be able to take that opportunity and make it take you to the next step. So if you are well-read, you work passionately, you read widely, I'm sure when the opportunity door knocks, you'll be ready and able to take it up, and you'll be like the next best young lawyer in the country.
Thank you so much, Faith. And lastly, to you, Florida.
The first thing that I would advise everybody to do is to believe in yourself. Without that, you can truly not go where you want to be, because you'll be your worst enemy, thinking that you will not get there. And most people actually believe that there are certain things they are not able to do. They won't get a foot into the door. But if you make yourself, for example, the top commercial lawyer in the country, businesses are always looking for the best. I'll give you an analogy. If you're in a boxing ring and you think the judges are going to be biased, make sure your opponent is on the floor. You give him a knockout and everybody will know you're top. So that's what we need to do. And also to look around you and lift up other women. Lift up other women. If there are opportunities, send them their way. If there are young people, young female lawyers, law students that need support, do it, because you don't want your daughters to be having these conversations in the future.
Thank you so much to all of you ladies. I think it's been a very wonderful and inspiring conversation. I just have a few takeaways for the audience, just to summarize the key takeaway points by the ladies. So be deliberate in what you do, be deliberate, be intentional about what you do and about what you want, and go for it. Find a mentor or sponsor to help you along your journey. Reach out to those who you admire, who are succeeding. Give back to other lawyers, other women particularly. As somebody said, lift other women up as you go along in your journey. And I'm sure you will reap the rewards. I'm sure Yom, for example, can attest to how her mentorship relationships have been reciprocated over the years. Put yourselves out there, not only by approaching potential mentors, but also reaching out to people even further afield than within your own proximity, through platforms such as LinkedIn or any other kind of professional online network. Be ambitious and don't be apologetic for it. I love that from Florida. That's my favorite. that she said. So often women get punished for being ambitious, and really it must be celebrated, particularly if it's not selfish ambition, and particularly if you're reaching out and helping others as you are going along your journey. Of course, she also said, believe in yourself, because sometimes no one else will, and you've got to be your best supporter. So, you know, really just go for it and believe in yourself, even when others don't. And aligned to that is don't have limiting beliefs about your own abilities to achieve. Trust yourself and your abilities, so long as you are prepared, you've read, and you know, you're on top of your work. And yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up everything that the ladies said. Just to thank our hosts, the Institute for African Women in Law, for hosting this wonderful conversation. A reminder to all of you, if you come across their survey, which they've circulated widely across the continent, please do fill in the survey, because it's very important information that we need to be able to help other women in law as we go forward. Because we need that information to assess what is the current status of women in the profession at the moment. And just to say, in line with this year's theme, embracing equity, go out there and make it happen. We can achieve anything that we put our minds to. So go for it, absolutely, and definitely believe in yourself. So thank you once again, not only to our speakers, Faith Odhiambo, Yom Ama Abledu, and Florida Tabasinga. I hope I've got that right. So thank you to you all, and I really appreciate this conversation. And do join us once again when there's another program. But for now, bye and have a lovely day. Thank you to you all.